I was sitting in the police station, my hands trembling as I signed my name to a domestic violence report that I knew was completely false. Officer Johnson handed me the paperwork, and I felt like I was signing away my soul. But when I looked up and thought about my daughter Amanda's tear-stained face begging me to help her, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing. "Mom, this is the only way I can get out of this marriage," she had sobbed just hours earlier. I never imagined that one signature would destroy 3 families and nearly send an innocent man to prison. Before I tell you how one lie destroyed 3 families and nearly sent an innocent man to prison, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and if you have ever done something you regretted to protect someone you love, hit that like button. But I need to warn you, what happened next will make you question everything you think you know about family loyalty. Let me take you back to understand how a devoted mother could make such a devastating mistake. My name is Clarissa, and I am a 35-year-old nurse who has been widowed for 8 years. When my husband died in a car accident, I made a promise to him that I would take care of our little girl no matter what it cost me. Amanda was only 20 when she lost her father, and I became everything to her mother-father protector and financial safety net. Working as a registered nurse at our local hospital, I dedicated my life to 2 things: helping patients heal and making sure Amanda never felt the pain of loss again. When she struggled in college, I paid for tutoring. When she could not find a job after graduation, I helped her with rent until she got on her feet. When she had relationship problems, I was always there with a shoulder to cry on and practical advice. Looking back, I realize I was not protecting her. I was teaching her that someone else would always solve her problems. 3 years ago, Amanda married Tyler Brooks, a software engineer who seemed like everything I wanted for my daughter. Tyler was 29, stable, kind, and completely devoted to Amanda. He worked for a tech company downtown, owned a beautiful house in the suburbs, and treated Amanda like she was the most precious thing in the world. When they got married, I was thrilled that my daughter had found someone who could take care of her the way her father would have wanted. From the outside, their marriage looked perfect. They lived in a 4-bedroom colonial with a 2-car garage, took vacations to Europe, and hosted dinner parties for their friends. Tyler encouraged Amanda's career in marketing and never complained when she came home late from work events. He was the kind of son-in-law who remembered my birthday, helped me with home repairs, and always made sure I felt included in their lives. But over the past year, I had started noticing changes in Amanda's behavior. She began complaining that Tyler was boring and not ambitious enough. She would roll her eyes when he talked about his work projects and make comments about how other husbands made more money or had more exciting careers. During family dinners, she would spend most of the time on her phone, barely engaging with Tyler when he tried to include her in conversations. Amanda also started working later and traveling more frequently for her job. She would mention new projects that required weekend work and business trips that seemed to happen every month. Tyler never complained, always supporting her career goals and taking care of everything at home while she was away. I thought it was wonderful that she had found such professional success, but something in her demeanor made me uneasy. The night that changed everything started with a frantic phone call at 11:30 p.m. Amanda was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "Mom, you need to come over right now. Tyler found out about everything. I need your help." I threw on clothes and drove to their house in a panic, imagining every possible crisis. When Amanda opened the door, her face was blotchy from crying. Her hair was disheveled, and she looked like someone who had just watched her world collapse. Tyler was nowhere to be seen, and the house felt eerily quiet. "Amanda, what happened? Where is Tyler?" She led me to the living room and sat down heavily on the couch. "Mom, I messed up really badly. Tyler found text messages and pictures on my phone. He knows I've been having an affair." The words hit me like a physical blow. My perfect daughter, my little girl, who I had raised to be honest and kind, had been cheating on her devoted husband. "Amanda, how could this happen? Tyler loves you so much." Through her tears, she told me the whole story. For 6 months, she had been having an affair with her boss, Jacob Morrison, a married executive with 2 children. It started as innocent flirtation during late work sessions, then progressed to secret lunch meetings, and eventually became a full physical relationship. Jacob had promised to leave his wife for Amanda and had been talking about promoting her to a senior management position. I know it was wrong, Mom, but Jacob makes me feel alive in ways Tyler never could. Tyler is safe and predictable, but Jacob is exciting and powerful. He understands my ambitions and wants to help me succeed. I was struggling to process this information when Amanda dropped an even bigger bomb. Mom, Tyler said he wants to file for divorce immediately. He is going to expose the affair and make sure everyone knows what I did. Jacob will never leave his wife if there is a scandal, and I will lose my job and my reputation. But I have an idea that could fix everything. She looked at me with desperate eyes and explained her plan. If Tyler had been physically abusive, she could file for an emergency restraining order, get him out of the house, and control the narrative of their divorce. She would be the victim instead of the cheater, and Tyler would be too focused on defending himself to expose her affair. All I need is for you to say that you witnessed him push me or grab my arm aggressively. Just one little incident that you saw when you were visiting. It would be your word and mine against his, and everyone knows you would never lie about something like that. As I sat there listening to my daughter ask me to help her destroy an innocent man's life, every maternal instinct screamed at me to protect her. She was my baby, my only child, and she was drowning in consequences that would ruin her future. Tyler was young and successful. He would recover from this setback. But Amanda's reputation and career would be destroyed if the truth came out. For the next 2 hours, Amanda and I sat in that living room, planning a lie that would change everything. My conscience was fighting against every word, but my love for Amanda was stronger than my moral compass. I kept thinking about my promise to my deceased husband and convincing myself that protecting our daughter was worth any sacrifice. The plan seemed simple on the surface. I would tell the police that I had come over for dinner the previous week and witnessed Tyler grab Amanda's arm aggressively during an argument. I would mention that I had been concerned about bruises I had noticed on her wrists in recent months, but had not said anything because I did not want to interfere in their marriage. Amanda would file the police report, get an emergency restraining order, and Tyler would be forced to move out immediately. "Mom, this is the only way," Amanda kept repeating. "If Tyler files for divorce first and exposes the affair, my life will be over. Jacob will cut ties with me to protect his marriage. I will lose my job, and I will have nothing. But if Tyler is the one who looks bad, I can control what happens next." Before we could put the plan into action, Tyler came home. I had not heard his car in the driveway, and when the front door opened, both Amanda and I froze. Tyler walked into the living room, looking exhausted and heartbroken, carrying a small suitcase. "Mrs. Clarissa," he said quietly, "I am glad you are here. I wanted to talk to you before I left." Tyler sat down across from us and spoke with a maturity and grace that made my heart ache. "I know Amanda told you about the affair. I am not going to lie and say it does not hurt because it does. But I love her enough to try to work through this if she wants to. Marriage is supposed to be about forgiveness and second chances." I looked at this young man, who had been nothing but kind to my family, who was willing to forgive an unforgivable betrayal, and I felt sick about what Amanda was asking me to do. But when I glanced at Amanda, she was staring at me with desperate eyes, silently pleading with me to stick to our plan. Tyler continued talking, unaware of the conspiracy happening in front of him. "I am going to stay at my brother's house for a few days, to give us both some space to think. When I come back, maybe we can start counseling and figure out how to rebuild our marriage. I do not want to throw away 3 years over one mistake." After Tyler left, Amanda immediately started coaching me on the details of our story. We practiced the timeline, the specific words Tyler had allegedly used, and the exact location where the supposed incident had taken place. Amanda made me rehearse my statement until it sounded natural, reminding me that any hesitation or contradiction could ruin everything. 2 days later, I walked into the police station with sweaty palms and a racing heart. Officer Johnson was professional and thorough, asking detailed questions about what I had witnessed. As I recited the lies that Amanda and I had practiced, I watched him write down every word, knowing that these false statements could send Tyler to prison. "Mrs. Morrison, this is a serious accusation. Are you absolutely certain about what you witnessed?" I looked Officer Johnson in the eye and said, "I am completely certain. I saw Tyler grab my daughter's arm aggressively and threaten her. I have been worried about her safety for months." Within hours of my police report, the consequences began cascading. Tyler was arrested at his workplace in front of his colleagues, handcuffed and led away while his co-workers watched in shock. Amanda filed for an emergency restraining order that same afternoon, and Tyler was prohibited from returning to his own house or contacting his wife in any way. The local newspaper picked up the story of a respected software engineer being arrested for domestic violence, and Tyler's mugshot appeared online alongside details of the charges. His employer immediately placed him on administrative leave pending the outcome of the case, and Tyler found himself facing not just criminal charges, but the destruction of his professional reputation. Amanda wasted no time moving forward with divorce proceedings, claiming that she needed to protect herself from further abuse. She hired an expensive attorney using money from their joint savings account, while Tyler was struggling to afford legal representation after losing his income. But as I watched the aftermath of our lies unfold, doubts began creeping into my mind. Tyler's mother called me crying, asking how I could destroy her son's life when he had never shown anything but love for Amanda. His friends and co-workers were writing character testimonials, describing a man who volunteered at animal shelters, donated to charity, and had never shown any signs of violent behavior. The worst part was seeing Tyler's genuine confusion and pain during the court proceedings. He kept insisting that he had never laid a hand on Amanda, that he loved her despite her affair, and that he just wanted to understand why his life was falling apart. His bewilderment was heartbreaking because it was completely authentic. Amanda, meanwhile, seemed to be thriving. Within a week of getting the restraining order, she had moved Jacob into the house, claiming that she needed protection and emotional support. She was already talking about redecorating and making plans for a life with Jacob once her divorce was finalized. 3 weeks after filing the false police report, I was driving past Amanda's house when I saw something that shattered my remaining justifications for what I had done. Through the large front window, I could see Amanda and Jacob laughing together on Tyler's couch, drinking wine, and acting like they were celebrating a victory rather than dealing with the trauma of domestic violence. That image haunted me for days. Here was my daughter, supposedly recovering from an abusive marriage, hosting parties with her lover in the house that her abuser had provided for her. There were no signs of trauma, no fear, no healing process. Just celebration and planning for a future built on the destruction of an innocent man's life. I started doing my own investigation, driven by a guilt that was eating me alive. I contacted Tyler's attorney, Sarah Matthews, pretending to want to verify details for my upcoming testimony. What she told me made my stomach turn. "Mrs. Morrison, I have been practicing law for 15 years, and I have never seen a domestic violence case with less evidence. There are no medical records, no previous incidents, no witnesses, except you, and no documented history of violence. The security footage from their apartment complex shows no signs of any physical altercations. Sarah showed me character references from Tyler's employer, neighbors, and friends. She had statements from people who had known Tyler for years, all describing him as gentle, respectful, and incapable of violence. She showed me text messages between Tyler and Amanda from the weeks before his arrest, where he was trying to plan romantic surprises and expressing his love for her. "The only evidence we have is your statement and your daughter's claims," Sarah continued. "But your daughter's phone records show extensive communication with Jacob Morrison during the time she claims she was being abused. She was planning this affair for months, and now she is planning a life with him using Tyler's house and assets. I asked to see Amanda's medical records, using my status as her emergency contact to access them through the hospital system. There was no history of injuries, no visits for unexplained bruises, no documentation of any physical trauma. The woman I had described to police as a victim of repeated abuse had never once sought medical attention for any injuries. The truth was becoming undeniable, but I was still terrified of the consequences of admitting what I had done. Then Tyler's attorney showed me one more piece of evidence that broke my resolve completely: a video message Tyler had recorded for Amanda on their second wedding anniversary just 6 months earlier. In the video, Tyler was sitting in their kitchen surrounded by flowers and candles, telling Amanda how grateful he was to have her in his life. He spoke about their future together, about wanting to grow old with her, about how he fell in love with her kindness and strength. The man in that video was completely, genuinely, hopelessly in love with his wife. There was no way that same man had become an abuser 6 months later. That night, I drove to Amanda's house to confront her with everything I had learned. I found her and Jacob planning a vacation to Hawaii using money from the joint account that Tyler could no longer access because of the restraining order. "Amanda, we need to talk. Privately." Jacob left the room, and I sat across from my daughter, struggling to find the words for what I needed to say. "Amanda, I have been looking into the evidence for Tyler's case. There is nothing to support our story. No medical records, no previous incidents, no witnesses, except me." Amanda's expression turned cold. "Mom, what are you trying to say? I am asking you directly, did Tyler ever hit you? Did he ever hurt you physically in any way?" The silence stretched between us for a long moment before Amanda finally answered. "Mom, it does not matter. Tyler was holding me back from my potential. He wanted me to be satisfied with a boring suburban life, while Jacob can give me everything I've ever dreamed of. Tyler is young and successful. He will be fine eventually. Amanda, that man is facing 2 years in prison and a permanent criminal record. His career is destroyed, his reputation is ruined, and his family is devastated. All because he loved you enough to forgive your affair. So what, he should have paid more attention to me. Maybe if he had been more ambitious, more exciting, I never would have looked elsewhere. This is partially his fault for taking me for granted." As I listened to my daughter dismiss the destruction of an innocent man's life as an inconvenience, I realized that I had failed her in the worst possible way. By always protecting her from consequences, by always solving her problems, I had raised someone who believed that other people existed to serve her needs, and that their suffering was acceptable as long as she got what she wanted. The next morning, I called the district attorney's office and asked for a meeting. When I sat across from Prosecutor Janet Williams, I told her the complete truth about everything that had happened. I admitted that I had lied in my police report, that Tyler had never been violent, and that Amanda had asked me to help her frame him to gain advantage in their divorce. "Mrs. Morrison, do you understand that filing a false police report is a felony? You could face jail time and permanent criminal record for what you have done." I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief despite the terrifying consequences. "I understand, but I cannot let an innocent man go to prison because I was trying to protect my daughter from the consequences of her own choices." Within 48 hours, Amanda was arrested for filing false police reports and perjury. Tyler's charges were immediately dropped, but the damage to his life had already been done. Jacob Morrison was investigated for conspiracy and lost his executive position when the scandal became public knowledge. Amanda's reaction to my betrayal was swift and brutal. She called me from jail screaming that I had destroyed her life for a man who meant nothing to me. "He is not your family. I am your daughter, your own blood, and you chose him over me." But I had finally learned the difference between protecting someone and enabling them. Amanda Tyler is not the one who destroyed your life. You destroyed your life with your choices, and I made it worse by helping you avoid responsibility. I will not let an innocent man go to prison to save you from consequences you deserve. The legal consequences came swiftly for all of us. I was sentenced to 6 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, and a $5,000 fine. Amanda received 18 months in jail, followed by probation and restitution payments to Tyler for his legal fees and emotional damages. She was also required to sell the house to help cover the financial damage she had caused. Jacob Morrison lost his executive position and his marriage when his wife discovered the affair and his involvement in the false accusations. His reputation in the business community was destroyed, and he ended up taking a lower-level position at a different company while fighting his own legal battles. My nursing career nearly ended before it began recovery. The hospital administration placed me on unpaid suspension while they reviewed my criminal record. I had to attend ethics counseling and anger management classes before being allowed to return to work, and there is a permanent note in my personnel file about my conviction. Tyler's path back to normalcy was the longest and most difficult of all. Even though the charges were dropped, potential employers were hesitant to hire someone whose name had been associated with domestic violence accusations. He eventually found a new job with a company that valued his integrity over his past, but it took almost a year and several difficult interviews where he had to explain the situation. The most painful consequence was the complete destruction of my relationship with Amanda. She refused to speak to me for 8 months after her release from jail, blaming me for choosing a stranger over my own daughter. When she finally did contact me, it was only to ask for money to help her find an apartment since her criminal record made it nearly impossible to pass background checks for housing. Amanda struggled with employment for the same reason. Most jobs that required background checks would not hire someone with a felony record for fraud and perjury. She ended up working a series of minimum wage positions, living paycheck to paycheck in a studio apartment across town. But the most important consequence was my own journey toward understanding what it means to truly love someone. Through months of therapy, I came to realize that my protection of Amanda had actually been deeply harmful to her character development. By always rescuing her from the natural consequences of her actions, I had taught her that she was special enough to escape responsibility for her choices. 6 months after the trial ended, Tyler did something that completely surprised me. He came to my apartment not angry or vengeful, but with a kind of peace in his eyes that I envied. "Mrs. Clarissa, I wanted to thank you for coming forward when you did. I know it was not easy to admit that you had lied, and I know you thought you were protecting Amanda. Tyler, I am so sorry for what I put you through. There is no excuse for what I did." "You are right, there is not. But I also understand that you were trying to be a good mother in the only way you knew how. The difference is that you realized your mistake and fixed it before it was too late. That took courage." Tyler's forgiveness was a gift I did not deserve, but it helped me begin the long process of forgiving myself. He told me that he was in therapy working through the trauma of false accusations and that he was slowly rebuilding his life. He had started dating someone new, a woman who appreciated his honesty and kindness. As part of my community service, I was assigned to work at a domestic violence shelter, which turned out to be exactly the education I needed. Working with real victims of abuse showed me the devastating impact of actual domestic violence and the incredible harm caused by false accusations that make it harder for real victims to be believed. The women at the shelter taught me about real trauma, real fear, and the courage it takes to escape genuinely dangerous situations. I began to understand how my daughter's fake claims had trivialized their experiences and potentially made it harder for future victims to get the help they needed. 18 months after the trial, Amanda and I began attending family therapy together. It was uncomfortable and often painful, but slowly we started to rebuild some kind of relationship based on honesty rather than enabling. Amanda was finally beginning to take responsibility for her choices and understand the impact her actions had had on everyone involved. "Mom, I know what I did was wrong," she said during one of our sessions, "but I was so angry that Tyler was not the man I thought I deserved. I felt like life was passing me by while he was content with ordinary happiness. Amanda. The problem was never that Tyler was not good enough. The problem was that you had unrealistic expectations and no appreciation for genuine love. Amanda is now working full-time at a retail job and slowly paying back the restitution she owes Tyler. She has her own apartment and is learning to live independently for the first time in her life. Our relationship is limited but honest, built on new boundaries that protect both of us from falling back into old patterns. I learned that real love sometimes means letting the people you care about face the consequences of their actions. Protecting Amanda from every difficulty had not prepared her for real life. It had handicapped her ability to make good choices and take responsibility for bad ones. 2 years later, I am in a new relationship with someone who respects the growth I have achieved through this painful experience. My work at the domestic violence shelter has become a permanent part of my life, and I am committed to helping real victims while educating others about the harm caused by false accusations. Tyler has built a successful new life with someone who values his character. He has testified at awareness events about false accusations and the importance of believing in truth over convenience. He has forgiven me completely, though he maintains appropriate boundaries with Amanda. The greatest lesson I learned is that love without wisdom is just destruction dressed up as protection. For years I thought being a good mother meant shielding Amanda from every consequence and solving every problem for her. Instead, I was teaching her that she was too special to face reality and that someone else would always clean up her messes. Real love means holding the people you care about accountable for their actions. It means teaching them to be honest, responsible, and considerate of others. It means letting them fail sometimes so they can learn to succeed on their own. They say a mother's love knows no bounds. But I learned that day that love without wisdom is just destruction dressed up as protection. The greatest disservice I ever did my daughter was not failing to protect her from consequences. It was teaching her that love meant someone else would always clean up her messes. What would you do if your child asked you to lie to protect them from consequences they deserved? Have you ever had to choose between supporting someone you love and doing what is right? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because these decisions shape not just our lives, but the character of the people we are trying to protect. Hit that like button if this story made you think about the difference between protecting and enabling someone you love. Subscribe for more real stories about family loyalty, moral choices, and the courage it takes to do the right thing even when it hurts. Please share this video with parents who need to hear that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let your children face the consequences of their actions. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that true love requires both compassion and accountability in equal measure.